Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The heavy, metallic click of the shackles snapping around my ankle echoed through the penthouse like a gunshot, loud enough to shatter the illusion of my previous life. I didn't flinch. I refused to give him that satisfaction, but my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird desperate for the sky. Comfortable. The voice was low, a smooth baritone that wrapped around my senses like velvet soaked in poison. I looked up from the floor, my knees aching against the cold marble, to meet the gaze of the man who now held the deed to my soul. Cashin the Wraith Moretti. He sat on the edge of the sprawling king-sized bed, legs spread in an arrogant display of dominance, cleaning a speck of lint from his immaculate charcoal suit. He didn't look like a thug. He looked like a fallen angel who had conquered hell and turned it into a business empire. His eyes, the color of burnt whiskey, bored into mine with a terrifying mixture of amusement and possession. "You can't keep me here," I spat out, though the tremor in my voice betrayed me. "This is kidnapping. It's insane." Cashin leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. The movement brought his face inches from mine. I could smell him, sandalwood, gun oil, and the sharp, metallic tang of expensive cologne. "Kidnapping implies you were taken against the will of your guardian, Julian. But we both know that isn't true. Your father didn't just sign a check. He signed a transfer of ownership." He reached out, his fingers rough and calloused, and traced the line of my jaw. I jerked away, but he was faster, his hand snapping around my throat. Not enough to choke, but enough to hold me in place. "You are Collateral," he whispered, his thumb stroking my pulse point. "And until that debt is paid, you don't leave this room. You don't breathe unless I say you can." The events that led me to the floor of the city's most dangerous man were a blur of incompetence and betrayal. My father, a man whose ambition always outstripped his intelligence, had gambled everything on a shipping venture that sank before it left the harbor. He had borrowed from banks, then loaned sharks, and finally, when the doors of legitimate society slammed in his face, he went to the Moretti family. I was an actuary. I dealt in risk assessment, in numbers, in cold, hard logic. I had told my father the venture was a statistical impossibility. He hadn't listened. And when the deadline came, and the money wasn't there, he offered the only thing of value he had left, his son. "He's a genius with numbers," my father had stammered in the warehouse an hour ago, sweat dripping from his nose. "He can fix your books. He can launder whatever you need. Just take him as security." Cashin had looked at me then, standing in the grime of the dockyards in my pressed office where, looking utterly out of place. He hadn't looked at my brain. He had looked at my hands, my neck, the way I held myself despite the fear. "Done," Cashin had said. And just like that, I was sold. Now, the reality of the situation was settling in. The room was expansive, a master suite that spanned the entire top floor of the Obsidian Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, a glittering sea of lights that felt a million miles away. The decor was minimalist and dark, blacks, grays, and deep crimsons. It was masculine, oppressive, and undeniably expensive. And then there was the chain. It was attached to a heavy bolt secured directly into the marble floor beneath the bed. It was long enough to allow me to reach the en-suite bathroom and the small sitting area by the window, but short enough to keep the heavy oak doors of the bedroom tantalizingly out of reach. "Why here?" I asked, pulling at the cuff around my ankle. It was lined with soft leather to prevent chafing, a confusing mercy. "You have a dungeon, I assume." "A basement. Why your bedroom?" Cashin stood up, walking over to a crystal decanter on a sidebar. He poured 2 fingers of amber liquid. "My enemies know where I live, Julian. If I put you in a cell in the basement, a rival faction could break in, kill the guards, and peel your skin off just to send me a message. You are valuable collateral. I don't like my assets damaged." He turned, swirling the drink. "Besides," he took a sip, his eyes darkening, "I have trust issues. The only place in this city I know is absolutely secure is this room. The walls are reinforced steel. The glass is bulletproof. The biometric lock on the door opens only for me. You are safer here than you would be in the president's bunker. So I'm a prisoner for my own protection?" I scoffed. "You're a prisoner because your father is a moron, Cashin corrected coolly. But yes, you stay here. You sleep in this bed. You do as you're told. I won't sleep in your bed. Cashin smiled, a sharp, predatory expression that made my stomach flip. The floor is marble, Julian. It gets very cold at night. The choice is yours. The first 3 days were a battle of wills. I slept on the chaise lounge by the window, shivering under a thin throw blanket I found, refusing to go near the massive bed where Cashin slept. He didn't force me. He barely acknowledged me. He would enter the room late at night, stripped down to his boxers with a casual disregard for my presence, and collapse into sleep. In the mornings, he would dress in silence, his body a map of scars, knife wounds on his ribs, a bullet graze on his shoulder, tattoos of serpents and geometric shapes wrapping around his arms. He was a masterpiece of violence. I spent my days pacing the length of my chain, watching the city below, and stewing in my anger. But boredom is a powerful solvent for resolve. By the 4th day, I was going stir-crazy. Cashin returned earlier than usual that evening. He looked exhausted. He loosened his tie, tossing his jacket onto the chair, and sat at the small desk in the corner of the room, opening a laptop. He began to type, aggressive, angry strokes. He cursed, slammed his fist on the desk, and rubbed his temples. I watched him from the floor. Trouble in paradise? Shut up, he growled without looking around. You're making a mistake, I said, my actuary instincts overriding my self-preservation. Cashin swiveled in the chair. Excuse me. I can hear you typing. You're trying to reconcile a ledger, but you're hitting the backspace key every 4 seconds. You're looking for a discrepancy, probably a skimming off the top, but you're looking at the gross totals, not the transactional fees. Cashin stared at me. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Slowly, he stood up and walked over to where I sat. He towered over me, his shadow consuming me. And how would you know that? Because that's what I do, I said, meeting his gaze. That's why my father offered me. I see patterns in numbers that other people miss. Cashin considered this. He looked at the laptop, then back at me. He dragged the heavy desk chair over to the radius of my chain. He placed the laptop on his knees and turned the screen toward me. Find it, he ordered. I hesitated. Helping him felt like collaboration. But refusing him meant more days of staring at the wall. And a part of me, the part that hated chaos, wanted to fix the mess on the screen. I moved closer. He didn't pull away. I could feel the heat radiating from his body. I began to scroll through the spreadsheets. It was a complex laundering scheme, layering perfectly through shell companies, but the person doing it had gotten lazy with the exchange rates. There, I pointed, my finger hovering over the screen. The conversion rate for the shell company in Macau is fixed at the rate from 3 months ago. They're pocketing the fluctuation difference. It's small per transaction, but over volume, it's millions. Cashin looked at the numbers. He did the math in his head. His expression shifted from annoyance to a grudging respect. Who manages the Macau accounts? I asked. My lieutenant. Silas. Cashin's voice was ice. Then Silas is stealing from you. Cashin closed the laptop with a snap. He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since I arrived. It wasn't the look of a predator looking at prey anymore. It was an emperor assessing a new advisor. Get on the bed, he said. I froze. What? You've proven your worth. You're not a dog, so stop sleeping on the floor. Get on the bed. I'm not sleeping with you. Get on the damn bed, Julian. It's a king size. Stay on your side, and I won't touch you. But if I wake up and you're shivering on that chaise again, I'll shorten the chain. I weighed my options. My back was killing me. The marble was unforgiving. With a huff of defiance, I climbed onto the mattress, hugging the far left edge. Cashin turned off the lights and climbed in on the right. The space between us was vast, a demilitarized zone of silk sheets. Good night, Julian, he murmured in the dark. Go to hell, Cashin. I'm already there. At least now I have company. Weeks turned into a month. The dynamic shifted. It was subtle, insidious, like a vine slowly strangling a tree. I became his secret weapon. By day, while he was out running the city, I worked on his laptop, which was now encrypted to only work within the room, restructuring his empire's finances. I tightened his loopholes, maximized his profits, and tracked down leaks. I became indispensable. In the evenings, the atmosphere changed. We ate dinner together in the room. Lavish meals brought up by silent guards who never made eye contact. We talked. At first, it was just business. Then, it became debates about philosophy, art, politics. Cashin was surprisingly well-read, a man who quoted Machiavelli and Dante as easily as he issued death threats. The physical distance on the bed shrank. I would wake up in the middle of the night to find myself gravitating toward his heat. One morning, I woke up with his arm thrown heavily over my waist, his face buried in the crook of my neck. I should have pushed him away. I should have been repulsed. But as I lay there, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, feeling the solid weight of him, I felt a treacherous sense of safety. For all his violence, for all the blood on his hands, he had never hurt me. In this room, chained to his bed, I was protected from the world that had chewed me up and spit me out. But the world outside was not done with us. It happened on a Tuesday. A storm was raging outside, rain lashing against the panoramic windows. Cashin had come home early, agitated. Silas, the lieutenant I had exposed, had been dealt with, but the power vacuum had invited challengers. "You need to stay away from the windows tonight," Cashin said, unbuttoning his shirt. He looked weary, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. "Why?" I asked, looking up from a book. "Because there's a price on my head, and anyone standing next to me is a target." He walked into the bathroom to shower. I heard the water running. I stood up and stretched, the chain rattling softly. I walked toward the window, mesmerized by the lightning for a moment, before remembering his warning and stepping back. Suddenly, the biometric lock on the bedroom door beeped. It wasn't the positive chime that announced Cashin. It was a forced override, a screech of electronic protest. The heavy doors swung open. 3 men stood there. They weren't Cashin's guards. They wore tactical gear and masks. "Cashin!" I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat. The lead intruder raised a suppressed pistol. He wasn't aiming at the bathroom. He was aiming at me. I dove behind the heavy oak dresser just as the wood splintered above my head. Flip flip, 2 shots. Cashin exploded from the bathroom. He was wet, naked, and terrifying. He didn't have a gun. He didn't need one. He moved with a speed that defied physics. He tackled the first gunman, the impact sounding like a car crash. A bone snapped, a scream was cut short. The gun skittered across the floor. The other 2 turned their fire on him. "Get down," Cashin roared, using the first man as a human shield. Bullets thudded into the body of the intruder. Cashin threw the corpse at the second man and lunged for the third. It was a blur of violence, fists, elbows, blood. But there were too many of them, and Cashin was unarmed. The second man, having recovered, raised his rifle, aiming at Cashin's exposed back. I didn't think. I didn't calculate the risk. The chain. I had 10 feet of slack. I lunged, grabbing the heavy gold lamp from the bedside table, and threw it with every ounce of strength I possessed. It wasn't a precision strike, but it smashed into the gunman's face just as he pulled the trigger. The shot went wide, shattering the window. Rain and wind howled into the room. Cashin spun around, realized what I had done, and used the distraction to snap the third man's neck. He grabbed the fallen pistol and put 2 rounds into the man I had hit with the lamp. Silence fell, broken only by the storm and our heavy breathing. Cashin stood amidst the carnage, blood washing off his skin and the rain blowing in from the broken window. He looked at me. I was crouching by the bed, shaking, clutching the chain that bound me. He walked over to me, disregarding the glass shards digging into his bare feet. He dropped to his knees in front of me. His hands, slick with blood, cupped my face. "Are you hurt?" His voice was frantic, a raw sound I had never heard before. "Julian, answer me. Did they touch you?" "I'm fine," I whispered. "Cashin, you're bleeding." A bullet had grazed his ribs, a jagged red line against his tanned skin. He ignored it. He pulled me into him, burying his face in my chest, hugging me so tight I couldn't breathe. "I should have killed them all sooner," he growled against my skin. "I put you in danger. I failed. You saved me," I said, my hands instinctively finding their way into his wet hair. He pulled back, his eyes searching mine. The adrenaline was fading, replaced by something else. Something dark and hungry. "You could have let him shoot me," Cashin said softly. "If I died, the biometric lock would have reset. You could have been free." "I know. Why didn't you?" I looked at the man who had bought me, chained me, and imprisoned me. And I realized that somewhere between the spreadsheets and the shared silence, the hate had turned into something far more dangerous. Because, I said, my voice trembling, I don't know who I am anymore without you. Cashin stared at me for a long moment. Then, he reached into his pocket, or rather, the pocket of the tactical pants of the dead man on the floor, retrieving a key ring he must have swiped during the fight. No, that wasn't right. He reached under the mattress. He pulled out a small, silver key. He reached down to my ankle. The lock clicked. The shackle fell open. My leg felt impossibly light. I stared at the open cuff. Go, Cashin said, his voice rough. The guards downstairs are loyal. Tell them code Viper. They'll get you a car. Take whatever money you need from the safe. Go, Julian. He stood up and turned away, walking toward the broken window to face the storm. He was letting me go. The collateral was released. I looked at the door. It was open. Freedom was a hallway away. I could go back to my old life. I could be an actuary again. I could live in a small apartment and eat microwave meals and never fear for my life. I looked at Cashin's back. He stood alone against the darkness, a king in a ruined castle. I stood up. My ankle felt phantom heavy. I walked not toward the door, but toward the window. I stopped beside him. The wind whipped my hair, cold and sharp. Cashin didn't look at me. I told you to leave. You have a discrepancy in your logic, I said quietly. He turned his head slowly. What? You said I was collateral for a debt. The debt isn't paid yet. My father still owes you millions. I forgive the debt, Cashin said. Leave. I don't accept charity, I replied. I reached out and took his hand. His fingers were cold, but they tightened around mine instantly. And besides, who is going to fix your books after this mess? Cashin looked at our joined hands, then up at my face. The mask of the Ruthless Mafia boss cracked, revealing a desperate, terrifying hope. If you stay, he warned, his voice low, I will never let you go again. No chains, no locks, but you will never leave me. You will be mine, Julian. In every way that matters. I know, I said. He pulled me in, his mouth crashing onto mine. It tasted of rain, iron, and desperation. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was a claiming, a seal on a new contract. One written not in ink, but in blood and breath. The storm raged on, but inside the ruined room, the chaos had finally found its center. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. Or perhaps, how the wolf decided he preferred the viper's den to the wild. If you enjoyed seeing Julian make the ultimate choice between freedom and love, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you have run for the door or stayed with the monster who protected you? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt. Masterpiece. Best quality. High-res. 1.2. Korean manhwa style. Semi-realistic. Digital art. 2 men. BL. Yaoi. Man 1. Cashin. Tall muscular mafia boss. Wet black hair. Shirtless with bandages on ribs. Tattoos on arms and neck. Intense possessive gaze. Holding Man 2's face. Man 2. Julian. Slender but defined. Wearing white dress shirt unbuttoned. Kneeling on floor. Looking up with conflicted expression. Metal shackle open and discarded on floor next to ankle. Background is luxury. Penthouse bedroom destroyed by fight. Shattered floor-to-ceiling window with rain blowing in. Broken furniture. Dark moody lighting. Cinematic composition. Glass shards on floor. Sharp focus. Intricate details.